Of the newly released ships, the only combat-oriented one is the Python Mk2. Despite the name, it represents a significant departure from his homonymous older sibling. The Python Mk2 is, in fact, a much closer relative to the Fer-de-Lance. Much like the Fer-de-Lance, the Python Mk2 suffers from extremely limited optional internal compartments, and its powerful hardpoint layout is hamstrung by having just a Class 6 power distributor and power plant. To make up for that, much like the Fer-de-Lance, it sports a category-leading 6 utility slots. All those factors, taken together, scream a very clear design paradigm: shield tank. And that is a problem as anti-Xeno builds go, as shields are almost universally a liability in anti-Xeno. They make your hitbox bigger, they don't entirely protect you, as Thargoid weapons partially pierce shields, they force you to put pips in system, and this latter point being generally poorly understood, they generate a lot of heat while recharging. With the Python Mk2, you're thus presented with a tough choice. You can build it as a hull tank, much like you would an AX Fer-de-Lance, which results in a more agile ship, but a very fragile one. Or you can build it as a shielded version, which is tankier, but has no hull repairs, and forces you to contend with the issues inherent to shields. The shielded version presents a further conundrum. It is exceptionally difficult to build a shielded variant of the Python Mk2 that can remain under 20% heat while its shields are recharging, and thus can be of practical use in Titan space as a TitanBomber or TitanFighter. Taking all those factors into account, and with a lot of trial and error, we came up with 3 AX builds for a Python Mk2, in addition to a low engineering build for newer commanders. The TitanBomber version 3.1A, which is arguably the best TitanBomber in the game right now, the OreoSnacker version 3.1S, which is an extremely capable Orthros hunter intended for use at Spire sites, alert systems, and Titan meltdowns, the ZoneFighter version 3.1Z, which is a workable build for anti-Xeno combat zones and solo combat, noting that the Python Mk2 still falls behind the Crate, Chieftain, and Challenger in this role. And finally, we have a low engineering AX Python version 3.1U, which has less restrictive requirements than the builds above. Let's look at these individual builds one by one. With the advent of anti-Guardian Zone resistance engineering, original, as in non-modified, Guardian weapons became viable for use in Titan space. Gauss has long been known as the best such weapon against interceptors. Unlike interceptors, however, a Titan's thermal core doesn't happen to have any armor resistance. Furthermore, also unlike interceptors, the thermal core is a stationary target. Last but not least, ammo capacity is of primary concern for Titan bombing, as the time required to go rearm and restock in between bombing runs is significant. As a result, shards, and in particular large format shards, pull ahead of Gauss, and plasma for that matter, as a Guardian weapon of choice for core bombing. The Python Mk2, with its unique layout of 4 large and 2 medium hardpoints, is the best platform in the game for old Guardian shard cannons. Using premium ammunition, this ship is capable of soloing a Titan, that is, it is capable of doing 100% damage to the thermal core each cycle after having bombed each and every one of the 8 vents. It is fair to say that it is presently the best Titan bomber in the game. In addition to being an exceptional core bomber, this shard-based variant excels at quickly dispatching Cyclops and Orthoses as targets of opportunity. Be warned, however, original shards don't do well against scouts, hunters, and harder interceptor variants, so make sure you steer clear of those. Even with such evidence, this is a build surrounded by some degree of controversy. It is highly unconventional, as it sports D-rated shields and E-rated boosters, the former engineered for enhanced low power and low draw. It also makes the additional unconventional choice of using clean drives instead of the otherwise ubiquitous dirty drives that most combat ships sport. If your preference is to build a shieldless bomber with dirty drives, by all means, go ahead and build it that way. It will be faster, but be warned, it will be very, very squishy. For everyone else, join us in flying this shielded stealth bomber that will run below 20% heat while under frost and with shields charging. A close relative of a Titan bomber, the OreoSnacker distinguishes itself by not having the requirement to run cold. Consequently, it is able to upgrade its power plant to an armored variant, and its shield to a bi-weave variant, while still rocking 5 shard cannons. The nanite torpedo, which is entirely useless outside of Titan space, is replaced here with a beam to tag targets and to help cool down when needed. The OreoSnacker excels at quickly dispatching Orthoses and the Cyclops they summon. but be warned, they can get overwhelmed by scouts. Having a friend tag along with multi-cannons or otherwise letting scouts periodically leave is advisable. Also, unlike missile boats, shard boats have no way to deal with banshees at spire sites. So if you plan to use this build at spires, you will need someone else to deal with the banshees first, or if you're feeling bold, you can hop out in a dominator suit and handle them on foot. Before we move on to our next build, let me take a moment to say that if you find these videos helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell below. It really helps us notice your support. If you wish to use the Python Mk2 at anti-Xeno combat zones or in solo combat, you'll want to convert the ship to a more traditional shieldless build with military-grade armor. At anti-Xeno combat zones, the Python Mk2 will be primarily limited by its Class 6 power distributor, which is the same as the Chieftain's and significantly less performing than the Krait's Class 7. Since the Python Mk2 would have to realistically fly with just 2 medium and 2 small Gauss cannons, with worse convergence, less agility, and less tank than a Chieftain, it is hard to recommend Gauss for this ship. Mudshards do a bit better, with the ship's ability to mount and use 4 mediums with distant convergence, while retaining 2 large hardpoints for utility weapons such as beams, or anything you fancy really. In this reference build, we suggest a large beam and a Cyto Scrambler for additional hardpoints, but really any weapon of your preference can work. The Cyto Scrambler is there because it is extremely energy to damage efficient, and a good complement to the very distro-hungry large beam. If you don't have one unlocked, you can use a regular beam instead. Finally, let's discuss a low engineering build option. This entry-level build uses enhanced anti-Xeno multi-cannons, available for credits at your local neighborhood's rescue megaship, in addition to grade 3 engineering from starter engineers only. It won't perform as well as the Guardian equipped variants, and honestly, if you're going for a low engineering build, we would highly recommend going with a Krait Mk2 instead. But if you must have it, and it must be a Python Mk2, well, here it is. With builds out of the way, the obvious question is, how does the Python Mk2 perform in anti-Xeno combat? The answer is somewhat nuanced. Given its characteristics, as we already mentioned, it is fair to say that it is presently the best Titan bomber in the game. No other ship is capable of soloing a Titan, and that in and of itself is a remarkable trait that will ensure that this ship becomes popular in the AX community. The same characteristics make it a very decent Orpheus hunter, and it hazard the guess that shard-equipped Python Mk2s will increasingly be seen at spire sites, although organized groups like the Xenostrike Force will still prefer Mod Plasma Anacondas for spire combat. On the flip side, as a solo and combat zone fighter, the Python Mk2 does okay. Not great mind you, but not terrible either. It's very similar to the Fer de Lance in this regard. To test them out, I like to take ships for a spin and trying to do a hitless fight against the Hydra. I did manage to do it in the Python Mk2. You can watch the video of the fight in the link above if you're interested, but this ship made me sweat and work for it in ways that other ships simply don't. The Chieftain is a lot more agile, and the Krait Mk2 hits quite a bit harder with its larger distro, runs naturally a lot colder, and has over double the tanking capability. Net, it's really hard to recommend this ship over either of those two for solo and AXZ combat. Even as Titan space fighters, where the large shards of the Python Mk2 are handy, the Xenostrike Force will generally prefer to use Krait Mk2s, as the Python Mk2s are simply too squishy. In summary, and to use a Star Wars universe analogy, the Python Mk2 is a little bit like the B-Wing of Elite Dangers. That is, the best medium bomber in the game which, in a pinch, can also handle itself as a fighter, but will fall behind A-Wings, Chieftains, and X-Wings, Kraits, in a dogfight. And by the way, feel free to tear into that analogy in the comments below. I'm sure you have strong opinions, but I think you get what I mean. With that, may the Force be, glory to mankind. Commander Meccan, over and out.